Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Welcome to 2022 as well, since this is my first video in the new year on this channel. And what I thought I would do is just kind of give you a view of what it might look like to be on set, and specifically on set of this photo shoot that this video is going to talk about with the NHL's Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll take a look at the lighting from this angle, and we'll flip it around and look at the other angle, which was my shooter's angle. And then afterwards, we'll jump into Photoshop, break down two images from the shoot, and I'll walk you through kind of what I did in my post-processing. So let's get to it. All right, well, let's just pick up where we left off there in the intro to the video, and we'll take a look at the lighting view from the talent's point of view, as if you were on the set, like I mentioned earlier. And so my main light was a 1x3 strip, and I've got one of my Pro Light mods in this light. The reason is, with the NHL players, we were taking pictures with the helmet off, but then helmet on. And when they put the helmet on, there's a clear, as most of you have seen, a clear kind of plastic visor on that helmet, which reflects everything. And in years past, I was using a beauty dish, and it would leave just a round kind of highlight somewhere on that visor. Unfortunately, a lot of times it would go right over their eyes, which makes an unusable image. So in watching their team play over the past couple of years and just observing reflections in that visor, I kind of noticed that in the arena, there'd be like 4 light patterns on their visors. And so this modifier perfectly recreated what that looks like in a game if you were to watch them on TV. So it looked a heck of a lot better than just a round circle on the visor, and did a great job. And I'll show a couple of examples on the screen. Okay, so this being my main light, which was boomed out in front, I then had a fill light behind me, which in this case was a medium, which is a 43-inch Westcott umbrella. Normally I'm using one of the larger umbrellas, but on day one of the shoot, we were not able to shoot in the arena. And so we had to kind of call an audible, and we were in one of the locker rooms in their practice facility, which is a pretty tight space. And so it didn't really allow for the larger fill. And so I opted for the smaller medium umbrella fill. And it just kind of goes to show too, overall, that sometimes you have to adapt to your settings, different scenarios when you go onto a location, and so in that case, what I had to do is shrink down what I would normally use for a fill, and but it worked just fine. And so what I did though too is I brought that same setup when we went to the arena, just so the images would be consistent. So when I delivered my images, the creative team wouldn't have an issue with images looking different depending on what day that we captured them. So that's the reasoning behind the smaller fill than usual. And now let's rotate it around and look at the lighting setup from the photographer's, like my perspective. All right, so this is the other view. So this is the view from the camera, and this is obviously not to scale, but I've just got all the modifiers out here. Just trying to do a little something different, a little more interactive as we walk through this photo setup. And I know I'll show video too from the actual set, so you can get a better sense of how things were positioned. But so to start, I've got another medium umbrella over here to work kind of a softer edge light on this side of my athlete. On this side, I've got a 1x6 Pro Photo strip, which is going to give a little more defined of a edge light on this side of my athlete. To enhance both of those edges, I've got a reflector on either side. I've just got one set up here, but you'll see in the video from the actual shoot that I've got one on either side of my talent. And so I'm working 4 lights to create the edges on either side of my talent. And To further look at how I use these reflectors, I'm going to put a link up here to an earlier video where I discuss those in greater detail. Now back behind me, I've got the 7th light in this setup, and then this one has a red gel on it, and we had that firing onto the black backdrop, which created a custom kind of team color background, which the players then, it looked like we had photographed kind of almost with a red, not a vignette, but like a gradient, like a red gradient kind of behind the players. So pretty cool effect. That gives the creative team extra options when they're using these images. They can use it that way or do their normal cutouts for different design work. So this is basically kind of how we made it happen. And I'll show some video, kind of some raw footage from the first day of the shoot so you can kind of see what was going on in that smaller locker room. And then you can see the setup that we did at the arena and how we kind of made that work. And it's just, when you're in a tight space like the first day, it really makes those wider spaces such a luxury. And on top of that, finally, what we did is we had a secondary setup with some of the Pro Light mods that we would just carry on to set. I'm gonna show you like part of that in the video, and I'll grab one here. All right, so what we would do is just kind of walk them out just like this, as you saw like in the video. This is one of the 2x3 models. On the actual shoot, we used the 3x3 models, and you can see how that worked. These are a lot of fun to use, and when tethered, the athletes, the players, they could see exactly what's popping up on the screen, and that just makes it for a fun photo shoot. So now let's jump over to the computer and I'll show you how I broke down a couple of these images in Photoshop. All right, so now that we've covered the lighting on how I captured these players on set, let's jump into Photoshop and I'll run you through, like I said, 2 of my images. One of them I posted up on my Instagram account, and it's like one of like 3 different ones that I did in this style. And then the other one, I'm gonna show you just how I can change the color of the background smoke and stuff when I'm using the Pro Light mods to have it match like a team color or what have you. So let's jump right into it. All right, so here we are with the final result for one of the images where my players composited into the backdrop. And let's show you where, and this is where we're gonna start to get to the final result right here. And so this is a background shot of the inside of the arena, and this is something I try to do when I'm working with a team or just when I'm in a building or a stadium of any kind of sort. What I will try to make time to get some images of, the arena stadium, like I was saying, just so I have them in case I want to use them in the future. And here's a good example of that. So I went and took some images of the arena. This is the one that I chose for this particular image. I'm looking at kind of, I guess, my player's body position, stuff like that, how it's going to interact with the background. And up here I've got some stadium lights kind of setting up a type of scenario, and then I've got these lines here that will kind of help the viewer's eye kind of go toward my athlete. So that's just kind of a quick and dirty way of explaining how I can just try to geometrically pick something that might work for a compositional sake. All right, so that being said, in this case, I wanted to add one more light up in this top corner, so that's what I did here first. I think I just grabbed probably part of the arena and slid it over and then masked out the rest of it, just isolating that one light. The next layer is a curves adjustment where I'm bringing down the ambient kind of light in the arena around the seats and stuff that might be distracting to the viewer. This will also help move my subject out toward the viewer. Okay, and so my next layer is the actual player himself. So you can kind of see that red background that we discussed in the lighting setup. That's this is what it looks like. And so, and select them out of that is really simple. The only thing I ran into here is on this image, I've got some area looking through the visor, and I can't like erase this out. So I had to figure out a way to deal with that and lose that red, because it obviously clashes with the dark background. So what I did is put in a hue saturation adjustment here, and just isolated it there, basically just pulling down the red, or actually the all saturation there. So I just pulled it straight down. And then on my next layer, this is a dodge and burn kind of carve layer. I kind of call it a carve sometimes. And you can see what I did here is I darkened down this part of it, and then I lightened up this part. So this kind of makes it look like it's transparent going, and I left a little bit so you can see a little bit of what it is. But it's matching up with that dark background. But then here I thought it might be cool because it might look like it's catching one of these stadium lights from back behind the player. So let's take a look. This is a neutral 50% gray layer set to soft light. But if we take it up to normal here, you can kind of see what I've done. I've accented the catch lights in my player's eye here. You can see this is the work I did right there on that clear part of the visor. And then I've gone through here and helped accentuate some of the shadow and highlights on the uniform. And so set to soft light, and that's what that does there. I'll toggle it on and off so you can see that. My next layer, I brought in one more kind of highlight up in this corner. So this kind of bookends my athlete, where it looks like I've got some arena lights on either side. It also kind of shows some motivation for these highlights on this side of his helmet. Just trying to make it make sense in a visual sense there. Okay, so then my next layer here is like a smoke layer, and this is set to screen. So this is basically smoke photographed on a black backdrop, and then you set it to screen, and only the lightness of that layer will show. So let me go up here. We can go to normal so you can kind of just see what that is. Just a slight bit of smoke to kind of give a little bit of an atmosphere down in the lower portion of the frame. This curves adjustment just accentuates what's going on there. I kind of bring in the highlights and the darks there. On this color balance, I am just starting the color grade on this. I believe I'm bringing a little cyan, some blues into the shadow portions of the image, and then some yellows into the highlight areas. So just kind of the beginning of what the color grade would be on this image. Right here, I am just adding a small highlight to this stadium light right there, and that's a soft light layer where I've just painted white. And what this does is it's kind of overlapping, giving somewhat of a sense of a flare over the top of my player, which helps keep him within the bounds of this composite. I'm just trying to build the realism here. And then another color grade type of layer here. So this is just a fill layer of a certain color that I picked for this one, set to soft light at 25% opacity. Just kind of gives a little bit of a teal, maybe somewhat cinematic film look maybe to this. And then what I've done on this next layer is a select all and then convert it to multiply. So this is what it looks like in normal, and then multiply. And then what I've done is come over here and then masked in. So the multiply darkens everything. And so what I do is mask that out, and so that creates contrast. The masked areas are brighter than the rest of the area of that multiply layer. So you kind of see where everything darkens down except for the portions of the layer that I paint back in. So that gives me extreme control of the viewer's eye and where it's going within the frame, because you're naturally going to look at the brighter areas of the image, and this is a great tool for that. And here I'm actually further controlling that with this layer. It's a curves layer where I'm bringing down portions of his shoulder here, and then the walls here on the ice rink itself. I'm bringing that exposure down so it's not as distracting as before. And right here I'm just bringing down the saturation of the red. So I go into the select the red area here in this adjustment layer and just bring down the red. To me, it's just a little bit hot, or a little bit too saturation. There was too much saturation in the reds. Got a lot of reds going on in this frame with the uniform and the helmet, and then I kind of wanted to keep some of that out of his skin tones. Right here, what I've done is I select all, combine all layer again, and then used a high pass filter, probably around 59, 60, somewhere in that range, This is again kind of bringing that contrast. You can kind of see it right there. Just slightly doing this. I've got it just set to a 30% opacity. If you take it all the way up, it's just there's too much going on. You start wrecking the skin. You'll get halos in certain areas. If you've seen some other videos, this is a technique I use a good bit. So I bring it down to 30 for this image. This is another high pass layer, probably set around 2 pixels just for just a touch of sharpening to kind of bring out some of those little details. And you know, that pretty much rounds out the image here that you can see on my Instagram account. So let's jump over to this image. This is one of the ones that we brought the light modifiers on behind our talent. And I just thought I would show quickly how you can change the color of those light modifiers. You can also use gels on your strobes within those modifiers and do it that way, or do it in post like I just kind of did here. So this is where I ended with this image, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how I do this technique. It's really simple. So down here on the background layer, you can see, you know, I've got, this is where we start. I put a little bit of a curves on it, and then I duplicated the background layer, and then I run a selection on him so I can select him out. Photoshop these days, it's so easy to do that. Let me make sure I'm on the right layer. When I'm doing my selections, this is where I start now for most everything. Just go down here under select and hit subject. Let Photoshop do all the heavy lifting for the most part. You can see it's gotten these little areas here. I have to work on the stick portion. It kind of lost that there. But at the end of the day, it has come light years. And in the past couple of years, I mean, it's just the technology is really amazing. So once we have that mask in place, he is pulled out of that background layer. Then I can slide in this red layer, which then converts you know, the smoke to that and kind of gives it you know, somewhat of a custom feel to this image, because you know, the red is one of their team colors. And to select this red, a real easy thing that I'll do is just grab the eyedropper tool, scroll around the uniform, and you know, find a red that I like, create a new layer over here, and then just fill that layer with the color right here, the foreground color. So, and there you have it. And then we can change the blend mode to what looks good, and then change the opacity. Actually, I use color on there, and I've got the other one still lit up. So that one's a little bit dark. So I ended up, end of the day, selected a lighter color red, which seemed to work for that one. So that just about does it. You know, here with that setup. If you got any questions, comments, please feel free to leave those down below. If you feel this video is worthy, please hit that thumbs up button down there. And for more content just like this, hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell right there, so YouTube will let you know when I'm back on here. In the meantime, you can find me on social media at QuantsPhoto on Instagram and Twitter. You know, y'all please stay safe and healthy out there. If you want to see more content about the lighting, what I'm going to do is I will link the video right here for those rim lights, for my rim light video. So go watch that next if you have you know, an interest to see more about how I set up those style lights. And I will be here soon in the next one.